Welcome to HortTube. My name is Jim Putnam. In this video, I'm going to be planting this Wild Winter Daphne Odora into this container right here that's at my feet. I just got in a bunch of containers from Michael Carr's down in Atlanta. I did a video there a week or so ago. If you want to take a look at that video, I'll link it up here in the corner if you're watching on YouTube. This Wild Winter Daphne was actually introduced by a friend of mine, Jason Stevens. I was at his nursery and did a video just on some specialty plants when I was actually there buying it, but he actually was the person who introduced this one. I've got a video on this one on my channel if you want to go back and take a look at that. But this Daphne has a really amazing variegation. I'll give you a few close-ups later, but you can see that mottled variegation on this variety. I've covered Daphne over the years. I've got two other varieties that are going in as well, a green foliage variety and another area marginata, which is just a simple white or slightly yellow edged variegation. These are about to bloom. They bloom super early every year. Last year they were blooming by this time. Been much colder this year, so they're holding off a little bit. The buds are still tight. The buds are pink. They'll open with the center of the flower will be white, incredibly fragrant. Daphne Odora can be extremely temperamental, and there'll be somebody watching this who'll go, no, they're not. I slapped one in the ground. It's been great. But the vast majority of people who have experience with Winter Daphne will tell you that these things are very temperamental. And I'm planting two of them in the ground, and then I'm going to plant this Wild Winter into this container right here. And I'm going to use permatil each time that I'm planting. So in this container, I'm going to mix some permatil in with the soil that I'm using to backfill here. Permatil is an expanded slate. This company's in North Carolina, and so anybody that lives in or around North Carolina can probably find permatil in bags. There's probably an expanded slate product that's sold wherever you live, and go to a garden center near you. Basically, it just creates permanent drainage. So rather than use organic material, chunky organic material, which will eventually break down and become wet, potentially wet. Once it's compost-like, this just gives us permanent drainage. A lot of the bigger gardens that I go to, when I was at Danny Werner's house earlier last year, showing you that beautiful butterfly and pollinator garden that he has, he's got a base of permatil in that garden. There are lots of big gardens that I go to that use permatil as a base. It's kind of expensive. For me, I'm going to use permatil on a plant-to-plant basis. So something like this Daphne that I definitely just want permanent drainage. I don't want there to ever be a time where this thing's sitting in water. Perfect choice for that. I got an Edgeworthia going in, that kind of thing. That's why I'm going to use it. I'll give you a close-up of this. This container had a lemon lime nandina in it that I had planted last year as a 1 gallon. It's done beautifully, but I thought this container matched this Daphne pretty well, so I'm going to put this nandina in the ground somewhere and plug this Daphne in. And I've got a few pansies that are still in the container that I'm just going to leave there. So I'll put the camera over here closer and show you me mixing this permatil into this soil. So I've got some pine bark here, which is just chunky pine bark, just like all the nurseries use to grow their plants. If you look in this container right here, that's what Jason had grown this in. It's just a pine bark mix. It drains really well, but this permatil drains even better. Probably should have opened this first. This is a thick bag. Okay, so I don't claim to know how this expanded slate product is made, but there it is right there. A lot of people will use this type of material if they have voles. So if you have an area that voles are causing a problem, this can be mixed in, and it can be, like I said, it can be bought in bulk. I never have. I've just bought it in bags. I'm going to use. I don't need all of this for this particular operation, but I'm going to need it for other things I'm doing. So I'm going to go ahead and mix a goodly amount of this in here with that soil that's in that pot. Okay, so I'm going to put a base of this material down at the bottom of the container. Just will be underneath it. That's not for really drainage, but I just want this plant completely surrounded by this expanded slate product. My understanding is this doesn't actually add any real mineral. It's not feeding the plants in any way. It's just it's super porous, and so there's a constant supply of air in the soil there with a porous rock around them. But you do need to have some sort of compost product or organic material mixed into it to actually be feeding your plants. Okay, so I'm going to get this Daphne out of this container. It probably won't be all that well rooted. Maybe it will. Oh, pretty well, pretty good. Okay, I'm going to loosen these roots a little bit, and part of the reason is I want to knock a little bit of this soil off of it. Okay, because I'd rather have more of that permatil than the bark here. Okay, all right, so I'm going to put a little more of that mix. I'm going to put my Daphne in there, tuck the roots in there really well. Okay, and pack lots of this mix in. This mix is probably 60-40 permatil, really. I would imagine that's about where I ended up. And I'm just tucking it around really, really well. And I don't want to cover up any part of the top of this plant that wasn't covered up. Same thing I do in the ground. Okay, again, I'm making sure I'm not covering up the stems at all on it. So it's in the container and surrounded by about, like I say, probably about a 60-40 blend. It wasn't, there was no science to that at all. I poured some in the bucket, mixed it, poured a little more in the bucket, and mixed it. But this should give me good permanent drainage. Permanent meaning if it rains 3 days in a row, which won't stop raining right now, this porous rock will allow it to drop to the bottom, or expanded slate. There should be some sort of product available to you. Like, again, this is a North Carolina company, but I can't imagine that there aren't other companies doing similar types of rock. And again, it's just adding air to the container to make sure that there's no possibility that you're going to hopefully overwater your plants. I'm going to be using the permatil when I put the other two varieties in the ground. I'm waiting another probably week or so. I'm going to let it dry out some before I put those in. These are going to get maybe 4 feet tall and 4 feet wide, and that's pretty much all the Daphne varieties. There are lots of variegated ones, probably anything outside of like Ora marginata, which has the simple variegation, you probably have to find at a mail order company. And I know Mr. Maple, I think, has this one on their website. I don't know if it's available right this minute, but I really love this variety, and it's got different variegations in the same plant. Here's what I know about Daphne. It's going to flower pretty soon, very reliably, and then it's going to put on a lot of growth, and it's kind of almost going to look like a fast-growing plant, and then that will be all the growing that it'll do for the spring. But when they first flush in the spring, they, like I say, put on quite a bit of growth at one time. I'll probably plug some other annuals in after it gets too hot for these pansies around the edge of it for this season. And there you go. I did not run irrigation into this pot. I want to make a decision to water this when it needs water. I do not want it on any kind of automated irrigation system whatsoever. So again, I've got that Wild Winter Daphne video on my channel if you want more details on it. Thanks for watching.